Greetings. Welcome to the Film School. I'm Joe.
And I'm Chris.
Tonight we're going to discuss the new Todd Phillips version of the DC Comics iconic villain, Joker.
Arthur, does it help to have someone to talk to?
My mother always tells me to smile and put on a happy face. She told me I had a purpose to bring laughter and joy to the world. Hey, stop them! Is it just me? Or is it getting crazier out there?
Smile, though your heart is aching. Smile, even though it's breaking. When there are clouds in the sky, you'll get by.
What?
If you smile to your fear and sorrow, smile, and maybe tomorrow find that life is still worthwhile. If you
What's so funny?
just
Freak?
Gotham's lost its way. What kind of coward would do something that cold-blooded? Someone who hides behind a mask.
I used to think that my life was a tragedy. But now I realize it's a comedy.
you just smile.
Which just came out last week with Joaquin Phoenix in the title role. So right off the bat, I'd like to talk about. I really enjoyed the movie.
I did too.
I thought it was
very well done.
Yeah, probably my favorite film that Todd Phillips has done so far. And I know he did a documentary about Gigi Allen, but he also did a documentary about Fish. So, and he also did Old School and the Hangover trilogy, which I'm not really that much of a fan of. So
Nobody knows Gigi Allen. I'll kill him.
Gigi Allen's a piece of shit.
Yeah, I'm not a fan. Never been a fan. He's probably too punk for me.
Oh, what?
Oh, that guy's more punk.
He's a piece of
That guy's too
shit.
punk for me. I'll drink to that.
He is garbage.
I'll be quiet. I'll drink my beer over here.
But, you know, the music...
Pipe down, chorus boy.
I'll just shut up. Anyway, so back to the Joker.
So Joker, this is just to clarify, this is not a definitive version of Joker that's based on any actual specific origin. Joker has a variety of origins throughout the different continuities of DC Comics, and this is exactly just one of those. It's a what if. It's like an Elseworld. It's 1983 Gotham City. Character by the name of Arthur Fleck, played by Joaquin Phoenix, who I think did an incredible job in this role. Is as incredible as Jack Nicholson, and as incredible as the late Heath Ledger. Even Cesar Romero's Joker is really entertaining. Jared Leto can suck it. And I'm just going to leave it at that. Of course, for me, Mark Hamill will always be the definitive Joker because I think Batman the Animated Series is my favorite variation of the Joker. But as far as live action goes, this is one of the really good performances. But essentially, it's what if this guy had a series of really bad days following the theme of the Joker having a really bad day and becoming this arch criminal in Gotham's underworld, and I thought it was really good.
Well, he's clearly got mental illness. I mean, it's not just like...
Yeah, it's not just... It's the combination, though, because I think the Joker has always had mental illness in the same way that I think Batman has mental illness. I mean, Batman is a psycho. He's just a psychopath in a different way. But anybody who goes and wages a one-man war against crime by wearing a giant bat suit, you know, you got to be a little crazy. But that's why the two characters work so well together, you know, as arch nemesis, you know.
Feed off their craziness.
I'm not wearing hockey pads, you know, but kind of an interesting take, though, and how they pulled from a lot of different sources. So, you know, I've heard somebody ask, you know, is it keeping with the Joker origin of Jack Napier? And, well, Jack Napier was an original version of the Joker created for Tim Burton's Batman. It's not, these aren't the real comic book Joker, you know what I mean? Because the comic book Joker doesn't necessarily have a definitive origin. The closest would be the Killing Joke. And that also pulled a lot of elements from classic Bob Kane, Bill Finger Batman stories. So it's not, again, it's not like Superman or Batman where there's a definitive origin. It's a bit like Wonder Woman where it's kind of open to interpretation, and this is just one of many interpretations. But they did borrow a little bit from the Killing Joke, the fact that he wanted to be a stand-up comedian. He's not very good at that. They borrowed elements. I think they borrowed elements a lot from the Chris Nolan Dark Knight trilogy, as far as the moodiness, the feel, the chaos.
Yeah. Well, you know, and he got his inspiration from, well, you know, the king of comedy. There's a lot of...
Taxi Driver. Yeah. So there's some Scorsese influence there, too.
Sure.
But definitely, from, in my opinion, the Chris Nolan trilogy definitely wouldn't... This type of film wouldn't have been possible if it wasn't for the Dark Knight trilogy, in my opinion. But some really good cinematography, some really good...
it was shot by Lawrence Sher, which he works with Todd Phillips. He shot all the Hangovers and Zach Braff.
Oh, okay. Not my favorite.
And
did he shoot Garden State?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
He shot
best thing about that movie was the soundtrack.
He shot the new Godzilla movie as well.
King of the Monsters?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I thought the look of it was he did a good job.
Yeah, it looked like a film that could have been made in the early '80s for the most part. I mean, there was some modern cinematography in there, some handheld and stuff, but for the most part, especially the way it started. In fact, I love the use of the old Warner Brothers logo. It's like with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood using the old, you know, the late '60s, early '70s Columbia logo, using the late '70s, early '80s Warner Brothers logo that was designed by Saul Bass, who was the title designer. He did like Casino so going back to Martin Scorsese, I mean, Saul Bass did the titles for Casino and Age of Innocence, but he also did a lot of Hitchcock, Vertigo, North by Northwest, Psycho.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster.
So a lot of that kind of element to it. But I do believe that there's been a lot of unnecessary controversy over this movie with the whole incel scare, and I mean there were a lot of police officers in the theater there. The theater, the Century Theater in Colorado, that had the shooting in 2012 for The Dark Knight Rises. Of course, they didn't run the film due to not protests but requests from family of the victims. And to that extent, I understand, but I really didn't think that anything was going to happen in this film. This film is not a battle cry to, for incel. I mean, it's not a celebration of gratuitous violence. I mean, it is a story of mental illness, but it's also a story of the Joker, Right. We all know he's a psychopathic bad guy. And I even think his costume was a little bit reminiscent of Cesar Romero's costume from Batman 66, more so than any of the other movies. And they definitely kept a lot of the more fantasy type elements out, like falling in the vat of chemicals, or having a Glasgow smile, or stupid tattoos and a grill, because that's what the Joker would have.
Because the Joker's a gigolo now.
Yeah, the Joker juggalo, like
Or a
Gigolo. What's the difference? But honestly, like that's one thing that bothered me about Jared Leto's. I mean, aside from his wacky performance, and not wacky in a good way. I mean, tattoos. What did he? You go to Blackgate? No, he goes to Arkham Asylum. They don't do tattoos, makeshift tattoos in Arkham Asylum. It's not a prison, it's an asylum for the criminally insane. So and he's a little upset that there are all these multiple Jokers popping up because, you know, they did a variation of the Joker on Gotham. And
well, you know why? Because he sucks.
yeah, I'm not a fan. So my favorite thing about Jared Leto was watching him get his face pummeled in Fight Club. And that's pretty much it for me.
Yeah.
But he's, you know, like Tom Cruise, he's in a bunch of movies that I like. So it's kind of weird. But another aspect of this controversy is, again, glorifying violence, but it's the Joker, so you kind of know what you're getting into. I've had people ask me if, you know, or tell me I can't see it. It looks a little too intense, and it's intense, but it's not Silence of the Lambs intense here. You know, it's if you've seen The Dark Knight Return or The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises or Batman Begins, those, you know, the Chris Nolan movies, you can sit through this. It's not that intense. I mean, it has some graphic moments, some graphic violence in it, but it wasn't like throughout the entire movie, really. Just a few shocking moments of brutality.
Right.
And it wasn't nearly as extreme as Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Right.
Which, if you've seen that film, you know what we're talking about. But I mean, you know, there's been controversy about, you know, the sympathetic portrayal of the Joker, and I personally didn't see it as sympathetic. I mean, yes, he has a troubled background, but I mean, in the world of comic books, most heroes are born out of tragedy as well as villains, so
It's true.
I didn't really see that as... I didn't feel sorry for him for the decisions that he made to become the Joker, right? And also the aspect of... you know, they're making a social commentary about society. If you know anything about Batman, you know that Gotham is just supposed to be like this hotbed for corruption and crime. It's riddled with street crime, street gangs, like mafiosa, you know, like your boss Morone and, you know, Rupert Thorne, but it's also full of political corruption and police departments corrupted. So, I mean, it's just... in the DC universe, it's just a cesspool. I mean, that Gotham of 83 made New York of 77 look like Salt Lake City, Utah in 1984. You know what I mean? Like, it just seemed kind of pleasant. New York would have seemed kind of pleasant compared to this Gotham. But I think that was the whole point, is just hammering in just how badly that place needs a hero. But instead, they get this villain first. So... kind of an interesting take. Interesting use of Bruce Wayne and Thomas Wayne in this movie, too. Spoilers, by the way.
Yeah. Made his dad the true asshole that he was.
Yeah. This is the first unsympathetic take I've ever seen on Thomas Wayne, because usually he's like, you know, well-to-do, wealthy guy who's uncorrupted, who wants to help the city. But this version of Thomas Wayne was a bit of an egomaniac, a bit of a self-righteous asshole. Definitely a class struggle here in that film. But really good supporting players. I mean, it was like Robert De Niro. Boy, he's looking old, though.
Well, it's because he is old.
He is. I'm not... It's just... wow. It just... it's kind of noticeable in this film for some reason to me. But maybe it's because The Irishman, they do a lot of the de-aging. But I really liked his performance. Kind of a throwback to Rupert Pumpkin from... King of Comedy. Which, if you haven't seen that, that's a very underrated Scorsese film with De Niro and Jerry Lewis and Sandra Bernhard.
Jerry Lewis playing himself.
Yeah, basically. It's the same thing when he played Nutty Professor. Buddy Love is basically Jerry Lewis, you know, so I'm not a big fan, but... plus the whole "hey lady" thing gets on my nerves. You know, The Bellboy's a good movie though because he doesn't talk as much. But anyways, yeah. What were some of the aspects of this film that you liked?
I just liked how dark it was. I mean, because the Joker, I mean, he's dark. The Joker's dark. I'm glad how they didn't. he didn't. They made him a little less cartoony in this one, I think.
Yeah. That is one aspect that you know, normally the Joker, he makes you laugh while he disturbs you at the same time, and that's really kind of, I think, the most important factor to the Joker for me is, are you laughing at things you shouldn't because he's funny, but he's also psychopathic, where Jared Leto had neither of those qualities, but most people playing the Joker do. Heath Ledger certainly did. Jack Nicholson definitely did. Cesar Romero, okay, he's not so lethal, but I mean, he's always going to be my first live-action Joker, so I got to love him. But Joaquin didn't really, I mean, there were some funny moments, but he didn't really play on the humorous side until towards the end, you know, and
Right.
Joker sort of actually emerges. And that's the thing with this origin story is, in a way, it's a reverse superhero origin because, you know, like in a lot of the superhero origins, like Batman Begins, Batman really only pops up after the first hour, you know? It's kind of the same thing with the Joker here, which I thought was a nice reversal.
Yeah, you don't really get to see him till towards the end, really.
Yeah. What did you think of his makeup?
I thought it worked. I thought it was great.
I thought it was really good too. Very different. It's a very different take on him.
Yeah.
A little bit of self-importance in this film. I've kind of got the feeling that Todd Phillips and company kind of felt like they were making something that, you know, we've never seen before, and I think we have seen it before, but the only real groundbreaking thing here is just giving the Joker the full spotlight instead of making him an arch nemesis to Batman.
Right.
You know, but it is supposed to be a standalone movie in what they call the DC Black, which is supposed to be essentially like the cinematic equivalent of their Elseworld series. So that'll allow them to sort of have original takes on various characters.
This was DC's first R-rated film, right?
No, actually, Watchmen is their first R-rated.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Watchmen.
But it's kind of like, you know, everybody gives Deadpool credit for being Marvel's first R-rated movie when it's actually the 7th, because they had 3 R-rated Punisher movies and 3 Blade Runner. Actually, it's the 8th, because not Blade Runner, but Blade. They had 3 Blade movies that are all R-rated. They had 3 Punisher movies that are all R-rated, and they had a Man-Thing movie, which was R-rated. And those were out for years before Deadpool, but Deadpool gets all the press, and the same thing's happening with the Joker. It's the second live-action DC movie to be rated R after Watchmen, but they've also had 3 R-rated cartoons. They had Batman Killing Joke, Batman Gotham by Gaslight. Oh, 4, because they had Justice League Dark and Suicide Squad Hell to Pay. They're all R-rated as well.
Right, but shit, I lost my train of thought.
About the rating?
No, I was gonna bring something else up. Anyway, it's not that big of a deal. So,
well, if it comes to you, just shout it out. It'll probably start a trend. They'll probably have more R-rated DC movies. And it's gotten a lot of mixed reviews, though. I thought it would get a lot more positive reviews for some reason, but I think on Rotten Tomatoes it's only like 63%, so I don't even know if it's certified fresh.
It's almost 70%.
Is it now? Yeah. Opening weekend it was 63. Metacritic only gave it like 7 out of 10 or whatever.
Yeah.
But also I feel like some critics went in just hating this movie because it did not get a critic, like a journalist review beforehand.
Yeah.
They just kind of, I think, wanted to avoid any kind of negative hype or press or anything, and I think that kind of rubbed some of the critics the wrong way, because some of the reviews I read were just downright mean. Like, they just went in there wanting to dislike this movie, you know. But you know what's cool, though, is, I mean, it was only shot on a budget of $64 million, where Aquaman was like $180 million, you know. Justice League was like close to $200 million, somewhere in there. Shazam was also only about $80 million. So it kind of shows what you can do with a lower budget, because I enjoyed Shazam. We did a review of that earlier in the year, and we both enjoyed it. Although I bought Shazam, that's not one you'd probably rewatch. But
No.
But Joker, I think I'd definitely buy that. Would you buy that?
Oh, yeah.
So out of 4 stars, what would you rate it?
I give it 4 out of 4.
Do you?
Yeah.
I give it 3.5. I give it 3.5. Almost 4. Some moments of it in Arthur's head were a little odd to me, but overall, 3.5. I think it's worth seeing in the theater, definitely, before it's out. and it's definitely worth owning.
For sure.
Especially if you're a Batman fan. And I'm kind of hoping that, even though Todd Phillips has hinted that, you know, if the situation arose, they could do a sequel, kind of hoping that they don't. It feels nice and refreshing to have a standalone comic book based movie that's not a comic book superhero movie, but a comic book villain movie that feels very much like a standalone. You know, it definitely, I could see how they could make a sequel to it, but do they need to?
No, I wouldn't think so, but, you know, I guess for the right money, people do stuff. You never know.
Yep. It's too bad that Scorsese had to back out, though, as an executive producer because he was so tied up with The Irishman. Just because of all the nods to him, it would have been nice to have that name up there, you know?
Right.
But unfortunately, I mean, he's got this magnus opus coming out called The Irishman. That's, what did you say the runtime is supposed to be? Like 3 hours?
It's 3 hours and 30 minutes.
Holy cow.
That's long.
I'm excited for that. We'll definitely do a review of The Irishman, but
Sure.
I'd like to know what you guys think. If you like the Joker, if you were too intimidated by the whole incel scare or how intense it might be. Whether, you know, maybe you don't like DC movies, but if you do, it would be interesting to read some comments on what you thought of the film.
Yes, please. And always, please like and subscribe. Help us out, please.
We appreciate that. I will say this, though. Seeing the Joker dance on the stairs to Rock and Roll Part 2 by Gary Glitter definitely made me happy. That was a moment for me that I absolutely loved. So I hope you enjoy our review here, and we'll see you on the next episode.
I should laugh, but I cry, because your love has passed me by. You took me by surprise. I didn't realize that you